Did everyone have a nice Thanksgiving? Today is Monday, November 28th, 2016. We're having our special meeting of the Board of Education. Do we have a roll call, Mrs. Perino?
Okay, Odom? Here. Carol? Here. Mark? Present. Ford? Here. Huckabee? Here. Therese?
Here, quorum is present. First on the agenda, we have audience comments. Do we have anyone that has any audience comments? Thank you. Okay, we have nobody signed up, so without further ado, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is recognition of school board members, which I'm going to table possibly for next year. And I would just like to say that as a school board member, and I speak for the rest of the board, we are certainly appreciative of our community, and we appreciate the day set aside and the ceremony for our school board. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, we have the superintendent's report. Mrs. Lella.
Real briefly, we just have on the dashboard, at this point in time, compared to last year, we are down 27 students, so we're pretty flat from last year. It's about right. Just so you are aware, obviously we had parent-teacher conferences. By all accounts, everything went fine. We also had American Education Week, where all the schools received pizza on behalf of the Board of Education. And we also had building report outs. The district level administration, we traveled to almost all the schools, and one of them came to us. And we learned about what's going on in their buildings and basically how they're addressing instructional needs, and going very well. There were very productive conversations, and it was just really good to hear from the buildings and the teachers. So I thank them for their hospitality. That's about it.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have a consent agenda. We have 3 items. First, we have minutes of the Board of Education meeting October 17th, 2016. Executive session minutes October 17th, 2016. Committee of the whole meeting November 1st, 2016. And executive session meeting November 1st, 2016. We also have FOIA requests, as well as a gift from Isaiah Zartucci, a girl's bike and a boy's bike at a value of $250. We'll go ahead and address the consent agenda items during the discussion. I'd like to wish a special thank you to our gift. I will entertain a motion to accept consent agenda items as presented. Mrs. Odom, second Mrs. Huckabee. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, but I have a question.
Sure.
We had a meeting scheduled 2 weeks ago, and actually read in the Chronicle that it was canceled because there wasn't a quorum. How is that addressed in minutes?
At this point, they're obviously not here. We did draw up a document memorializing what occurred, and we'll put that on the next board meeting, but there was no meeting, so you won't have minutes, but we have created a document just kind of memorializing the events of that.
Okay, I noticed in Word docs that when you go to pull up the agenda, it shows that it was canceled due to a lack of quorum, but I didn't know how that's memorialized.
That's pretty much
okay, so that would be how it's done. And I don't know if this belongs here or not, but what's the procedure for letting the board know that a meeting was canceled because the quorum wasn't present? I was stuck on a delayed flight because I let you know I was at the airport, but I didn't. There probably should be a better way than reading the Chronicle.
Okay, well, I don't know, this has never happened while I was here. Is there a practice? I could send out a general email to all board members in the future, should this ever happen again.
I would think that would be advising the members of the meeting. They would have to be a good idea.
Okay, fantastic. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, I would just at this time like to thank Isaiah Sertucci for the gifts of the bikes for student achievement. Thank you very much. It is very, very thoughtful, and we certainly appreciate the ongoing generosity of our community. This is Isaiah Sertucci. Are you here? Or?
No, he's a Serene Hill parent.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Do we roll call Ms. Carino?
Okay, Harold,
Yes.
Worth,
Yes.
Huckabee,
Yes.
Odom,
Yes.
Simmons,
Abstain.
Marks,
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have committee reports. We have speed report from, we're going to delay that until next meeting. Next on the agenda, we have presentation discussion, school presentation from Western Avenue. This is part of our strategic plan of student achievement, goal number 2.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Education members, Ms. Novella. We have, as part of our 21st Century Learning, the practice on the 4 C's, communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And Ms. Klein is going to come up with Mahal, Gregory, and Corman and talk a little bit about how we implement that.
Right, good evening, everyone. I'm Miss Klein, and I have 3 students from my 2nd grade classroom last year. And we were given the opportunity last year to mystery Skype with students from Uganda. And our instructional coach, Tracy Bolfer, helped set that up with us. And they're here to kind of tell you a little bit about what mystery Skype is. And I have a quick clip to show all of you, and we'll go from there. So what is mystery Skype, Mahal?
Well, mystery Skype is where you Skype someone from a place and you have to find out what place they're from. You usually have a map of all the countries and you ask questions about where they are in the world. For example, are you north of the equator? Use the map to locate where you're from. If someone asks you from, you answer yes or answer no.
So we answer, or we have yes or no type questions that we ask them. From there, then they can tell us yes or no. So what had happened was we used our iPads and we looked at atlases, and I even put a huge map on the floor. And the students learned about north, south, east, west, and different countries and different places in these different countries. So I'm going to show you the clip of kind of what happened during that time. It's just a minute or so.
Norman, go ahead. Are you inside?
They're close. Thank you. They're close.
Are they? Yeah, that's this one. No.
Is your country touch Zaire? Yes, their country touches Zaire. Do you live in Congo? No? It touches Zaire. You're getting close. Say it again, they didn't hear you.
Do you live in Central Africa?
How many of you think you know it? Okay. Georgie, go ahead.
Do you live in Uganda?
You live in Uganda? Yes!
We got it.
Okay, so they're going to ask you some questions about... So that went on for about 20 minutes. So we started from everything from, do you live in the United States? And they said no. And then Africa was our next bet. So then a lot of them asked, are you north or south of the equator? So what happens is it really helps students learn like what are the appropriate questions to ask. And if someone just asked a question that was a no, we're not going to go back and ask that same question. Gregory, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
The way you can use this style is by tweeting video hashtag mystery Skype.
So in order to do it, all you do is go on Twitter, hashtag Mystery Skype Wisdom, and that's how you can collaborate with other schools anywhere across the country or the nation.
And did you say this was, are these A students, or is this, can you explain again the relationship between you and grade students?
These were my students from last year.
Okay.
We were able to do the Mystery Skype. It was like the third to last week of school. It was really complicated to get in touch with Uganda because of the time difference. So it took the whole year to learn like the map of the world, and then we were able to Mystery Skype with them. I think it was 9 in the morning by us, and it was like 5 in the afternoon there. So they were in their aftercare program, but these are the 3 students that I chose to pull, who were prominent in the video and who really enjoyed the activity.
Did other second grade classes do it too? I mean, it's a fabulous activity.
They did not, but this year, we're just starting our landforms unit, so I'm hoping to like spread the idea to like tweet out who they want to Mystery Skype, so I'm hoping that all the second grade classes, at least at Western, will do it this year.
Ms. Klein, can we have your 3 students come up to the board so we can meet them personally and give them a certificate of appreciation?
And go all the way around.
Fantastic. That was excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been fantastic. Thank you again for our presenters. You guys were great. We look forward to seeing you in the future. Thanks. Next on the agenda, we have acceptance of district audit from Legacy. Ms. Lavella?
All right, we have Louise King and Adam with us to present our audit. So, guys,
You should all have a copy of the draft management succession analysis. It's draft this year. We had some difficulty with third-party information, so that finally came in, and these are hot off the press. So Apple, we presented the draft. This is a nice summary of what's in your financials. Usually there are 2 other letters which we present. One would be the management letter. We do not have a management letter this year. Your business manager does take responsibility for assuring us that she will be able to prepare the financial statements if she has the time to do that. So because she does that, we do not issue a management letter for lack of ability to prepare financial statements. We found no other issues during the audit that we thought needed to be brought to your attention, no weaknesses in your internal control. And this is consistent with past years with your district. You historically been very close to your internal control. And the audit communication letter, which will tell you if there were any problems with management, there were not. In conducting the audit, everything went as planned. Now with that, Alan, it's all yours.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. You guys can turn to page 3C of the MD&A. We'll start here. This is the district's net position, i.e. the balance sheet. We're just going to go down here, go down the list. Obviously, first up is total assets. You can see your total assets increased from $56.1 million in prior years, $57.7 million in current year, about $1.5 million increase. One thing to point out, where it says current and other assets, that's cash and investments. Just want to let you know that. Your liabilities did decrease by about $827,000 in the prior year. Biggest portion there is you retire a portion of your principal and long debt every year. Going down, total net position was $47.4 million in the prior year, is $49.8 million in the current year, a $2.4 million increase. If we go to the next page, we'll go to the changes in that position, i.e. the income statement. We'll start here with total revenue. Total revenue increased from the prior year by $3.3 million. Lion's share of that is in your operating grants and contributions. That increased by $1.3 million. Your property tax collections were up $1 million. Your general state aid payments, which is your grants on specific programs, increased by about $750,000 from the prior year. Investment earnings were up $134,000. Really, that's the bulk of your increases. Other things in operating grants and increase was just the timing when you're receiving payments from speed, and then also the state also was late on making their 14-15 payments. Those can come into the 15-16 school year, so it kind of throws off your cash collection with the state behind the payment of the state grants. So federal's never late, it's just usually the state that's withholding at least one payment on any program. So. If you look at your expenses, your total expenses actually decreased by $8,000 during the year. Biggest portion there is in construction. Constructional expenses were down $589,000. When looking at that through the audit, we noticed that salaries and benefits were really driving that decrease. March of 2015, we had the head reduction in staff. So you finally saw that full year's decrease this year. Other than that, payments to other districts, government other units, those are your payments to ACO and SPEED for tuition for special ed students. We noted enrollment was down. Depreciation was up a little bit this year. That's just due to the new building and parts, all the new additions are being depreciated now because it was in use during the year. Other than that, we get back around to your change in that position. Once again, $2.4 million increase. That's all I have. Any questions on this page?
What's the $1.3 million increase in operating grants and contributions?
That was the, a lot of late payments from the state for grants from the prior year. So I had transportation grant, $443,000 from the prior year. State special ed was up $234,000. Payments received from SPEED was $300,000. It's just timing when the payments are coming in.
Okay, so it's not really
1.3 million.
No, correct. It's all timing driven.
Okay.
The state's historically did not lag that bad, and it's got a bad last couple of years. This 15-16 year was happening, which you didn't get till the 16-17 school year. So being cash basis, it kind of goes off a little bit because we don't accrue for that other. So it's what it's going. Any other questions? And that concludes our report. As I said, Louise said, everything else is in review. We should have the full financial statements and state report should be dated December 9th.
And we will bring them for actual approval on the December 12th board meeting, then so you'll have the full final documents in your possession with the December 12th board meeting documents.
Thank you, Mom.
Next on the agenda, we have acceptance of district investment report.
Mr. Gross?
It was interesting, everybody left right before the auditors. So it's kind of a trend of board meetings.
Incredible.
You should have received an annual investment report from the office. For the fiscal year ending June 30, 2016, pooled investments generated $5,087,000 in interest to the 18 school districts that we service. With an average portfolio size of $331 million, the cash basis rate of return to our school districts was 1.54%. School District 161 earned $525,000 for the fiscal year, with an average total fund balance of approximately $34 million. If you turn to page 2, you see a graph that compares our rate of return to other investments that other school districts invest in. And for the average monthly yield for the Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund for the same period was 0.8% The one-year treasury bill was basically 0.5%. 6-month CDs averaged basically 0.4%, and the 3-year treasury note yielded 1.03%. If you turn to the bottom of page 3.
Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Your yields typically this different from other investments?
Yes. Primarily, because as a pool, we have the ability to diversify and invest longer term, in longer term investments. Where many school districts, they get their money and they're just investing it to the next payroll or to their bond payments are due or some of the teacher payrolls. So we have the ability to extend out on the yield curve and earn a higher yield. And also, all the school districts that we service are diversified in over 270 different investments. So I'm very active, our office is very active in how we invest the money, looking at different banks throughout the country, et cetera.
Are you able to have a, and I just don't know this, because you're able to have more, I guess, an aggressive investment strategy, or because your school is pretty much?
No, it's actually very conservative what schools can invest in.
Yeah.
We're limited to the Illinois Public Funds Act, which is you can invest in stocks or commodities or real estate. We're limited to very conservative investments, CDs, U.S. governments, government agencies, municipal bonds, certain bank notes of high quality. So it's very limited in what we can invest in.
Yeah, that's, I guess, why I was.
And all school districts are governed by the same Public Funds Act.
Thank you.
So for the fiscal year ending, if you look at the blue bar, or the blue line, that was the yield curve at the beginning of the fiscal year, which was at historically low levels. And then you can see that as the year went on, it dropped even further, especially in the longer end of the yield curve. So you actually had to go out many years to get a 1% rate of return. In fact, you're about approximately 3 years, 5 years, excuse me, to get over 1% rate of return. Where at the end of last year, you were only about 3 years. So interest rates are at historically low levels at the end of June, primarily due to slow economic growth and global uncertainty, which resulted in money moving to the United States. More specifically, when Britain elected to leave the European Union, that created uncertainty in Europe, so a lot of European money came to the United States as a safe haven, and because of supply and demand, interest rates dropped. So that's one of the primary reasons why it dropped. Since the election, there has been a change that's not reflected in this report. Because of broad expectations of increased government spending, loosening of regulations and tax breaks, the stock market has risen to historically high levels, and interest rates have risen as well. So in fact, the 10-year Treasury note, which was yielding 1.88% on November 8th, is now yielding 2.32%. So there's a presumption that these actions will heat up the economy and cause some inflationary pressures to cause rates to rise. We'll still see what happens. It's only been a month, but that's the expectation in the markets right now. So that's something that's going to be closely monitored. Turn to page 7. On the bottom of page 7 are 2 pie charts reflecting the composition of the portfolio in terms of expected maturity. On June 30, 2016, approximately half the portfolio was in investments that matured in under 1 year. 31% of the portfolio was 1 to 3 years. 15% was 3 to 5 years, and just 4% of the portfolio was over 5 years in maturity. And if you turn to page 9, this is a breakdown of the portfolio in terms of types of investment. And 48% of the pool, the 48% of the district's money was in certificates of deposit. Each entity that we service would have up to $250,000 of money invested in a bank under FDIC insurance. So because we represent 18 entities, we purchase CDs generally in blocks of around $3.2 million to make sure that we're under the FDIC limits. And we're in approximately 80 different banks around the country. 15% of the portfolios in bank and corporate notes, 24% is in municipal bonds, and 13% is in government and government agencies. For the past 25 years, we returned in excess of $127 million in interest earnings to the school districts we service. I take this as part of my position very seriously, and especially during these trying times. It's not a ton of money, but every penny helps, and we try to do our part to help out as much as possible. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions? Mr. Simmons?
You guys have 17 districts right now in the pool?
18.
18?
Mm.
Okay. It says 17 on page 9, so you've added?
Well, we have one little small one. Yeah. The career prep network is a portion of the whole.
Has that number gone up dramatically or reduced dramatically over the past few years?
It's gone up. The last increase was West Aurora joined us, West Aurora Unit District, in maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it stays pretty steady.
If a district requests to be included or to be removed, what's the process that you go through in terms of the other districts that are in the pool, either remaining or existing? Do they have an approval process?
Well, so what we do with West Aurora is that we had a meeting of all the school districts, and we talked about it. So West Aurora, what happened was when West Aurora joined our office, they pay us a fee of around $175,000, $185,000 a year. And we were able to absorb that because at the same time we upgraded our software, computer software, without having to increase staff. So what that did was, since we're not a profit center, we were able to lower the cost to the other school districts because it's a net zero effect. So we had this discussion with the school districts. If they weren't interested, I wouldn't be interested, but they expressed an interest in doing it. I don't anticipate it changing over the next several years. We have received a couple of requests, but we haven't done anything with that.
So, the more districts that come in, typically that would require more staffing on your part to service those districts.
There's a point. So I would say that, I mean, our staffing is such right now, we have 2 payroll people, and we have two accounts payable people, 1.5 accounts payable people. Our staff is such right now that probably a smaller district we could absorb without increasing staff, but if we had another district the size of West Aurora, they have 12,000 students,
Right.
then probably would have to increase staff. But that would obviously be something factored in.
Do other districts have an actual vote in it, or do you just sit around and talk about it, and unless anybody's pushing back real hard, you make the decision to bring on a new
Sure.
district?
There's not a legal requirement per se. The boards of education and our board would have to both agree to it, but as a matter of practice, I would never do that without the approval of the school district.
That's all.
Any other questions?
How long have you been doing this for?
30 years.
Very young, really proud, very young. He dates himself, he dates me.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Superintendent Search, DWP and Associates.
Thank you very much. We're going to be passing out to you.
I feel like you're passing out to me to introduce Sheila, since she went.
Absolutely.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sheila Harrison Williams, Superintendent of Paper School District 152 and a half, and I'm also a senior consultant with DWP, and I'm looking forward to joining these 2 fine gentlemen in conducting your superintendent search.
She's the road between 2 thorns. Makes us look good.
So what we'd like to accomplish tonight is looking at the timeline. Hopefully you have your calendars with you tonight so that we can start to earmark some specific weeks or times in there to start the search and get this underway with that. And I thought we would start first of all with the interim superintendent. And you can see during the week of November 21st, we've been working very hard on the applications for that and see which candidates we think would best be a fit for you. And then the week of November 28th, of course, that would be this evening, we would like to meet with you in closed session and give you 2 or 3 or 4 candidates for you to consider for that and talk about the next steps with that. After that, we would then have the board conduct interviews and then make your appointment during that timeline. And then we will work with that interim superintendent to make sure it's a very smooth transition as we move forward with that as well. So that gives you an idea of the interim superintendent process. Do you have any questions for the 3 of us regarding the process
For the interim piece?
for the interim piece?
There was a question I think that came up around the interview of the interim superintendent candidates and how quickly we could make that decision. I know, this is more, I think, probably an interim question for us. We talked about potentially having a special board meeting if this happened, just so that we can have somebody on board. How does that fit into this timeline?
I think what you really want to do is come together tonight with an interview date maybe next week that you can free follow you up, and we'll have these folks ready. They've all been talked to. They're all interested. It's up to you to make a couple of decisions. One being, will you want just one person to get you through the end of the year, or do you want to share with 2? You need somebody every day. You know, there's some little simplistic questions, and we can go through those when we go over the candidate pool. But it's really up to you to kind of get a date and ready to start interviewing. They can begin fairly quickly.
So I'm asking this question because it's going into the timeline of what we're talking about. If we're talking about having people in for an interview next week, potentially, just making sure we're all on the same page as far as the expectations, when we're getting somebody in the door, our availability of things. And you know, I don't know the right form to talk about this because I don't want to take the floor away from you, but when do we have that discussion to make sure that we, you know, because the public, obviously, discussion is not an executive session discussion, so I want to make sure that we just have that.
Sure.
Discussion about timing.
I think,
On our availability.
I think when we look at our candidates, that might be something that we come away with.
Okay.
But otherwise, I've asked for some dates, availability. I've got a couple of replies in terms of this week. It would be possible even to meet with somebody this week.
Absolutely.
We did
We would.
post a special meeting for Wednesday night, just in case you decided to do it that quickly. It went up at 6:30, it was posted for 7 o'clock. It's about 48 hours to right now, if you choose to go in that direction, so you have that option available.
Okay. All right, great. That's
You give us the date, we'll round up folks.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And do you feel like you received in your experience, a sufficient amount and a quality level of applicants for this?
Absolutely. We wouldn't be here if we did not. We said we need to
We're
post
very
one.
confident we have experienced interns. The timing was good for District 160.
You're going to have a tough job.
Which is a nice problem to have.
Okay.
Any other questions about the interim superintendent timeline?
If you don't mind me asking, how many candidates were you all able to screen, or did you have? I know what you're going to present, but what was your number looking like without?
8.
And again, most of these folks we reached out to.
Can we move on
I
then
think
to
so,
the full-time superintendent search? And this is where you'll need your calendars with this. And this will be a little bit of a laborious task, but we need to start to get this in place. Because we're in a great place from a timing standpoint, and we have to continue to have that advantage, so we're out front with the search for that. So what we'd like to do is take out your calendar, we're now going to look at the back side of that page of looking at the recruitment, which would be that week of December 5 or 12. And what we need to do is talk about the posting for this position. It's been our experience over time that most of the postings are now electronic. Very little of the advertisements are done on paper with that. Some of those that we would be using would be the Illinois Job Bank, and we would do that through the school district, because they're a member of that.
Are you a member?
And then we would also look at advertising in the American Association of School Administrators, and that would be an online we would do. Depending upon the length of that, that would be around $400 to $500 has been our experience with that. And then Education Week is a weekly newspaper that comes out. It is also online, and we can do that too. We would recommend doing it online because it's cost efficient, and most of candidates now look online versus looking in the newspaper with that. Depending upon the length of that, that'll run around $800, depending on how long.
Actually, we'll probably only do 1 month, so it'll be about half of that.
Yeah.
You only need 30 days for that, yeah.
So it'd be around $400 then, if you're gonna do it for 1 month.
Got a question. With the Ed Week, how effective has that been in securing candidates that later have become superintendents in districts? Has it been as fruitful as the others, or is it one of those things, just to be sure, let's also advertise in Ed Week?
I think when you talk about Ed Week, you're trying to reach, doing a national search. You're going to be reaching people all over the country.
Okay.
And you may have people, and I think maybe Mark had mentioned this last time, there might be candidates who at one time were in Illinois and would like to come back here.
It's a minimal cost when you think of the picture.
Sure.
If you don't want to leave any potential opportunity to get a good candidate, whichever way they see it. It seems like most folks catch things on our own website. There's no cost for that. So as a matter of fact, people saw the interim post, they, read into it, and so when can we post our applications for the full-time position? So there is a buzz already just by posting the interim.
And then the other thing that we would do is also have a link to your website, so someone would go there, they would click on that link, and that would take us to the website that Mark was just referencing to that as well.
One question had come up before, but we didn't get to ask, I guess something you should respond to that piece, about your approach or your strategy to proactively go after the passive candidates, the ones that are not going to go out and look for this, but the ones that are not looking and who probably want.
We've already started that process already, and as you noticed as an example with the conference that was held in Chicago this past week, we were out there networking already, as long as some of our other associates as well with that. So.
And I was out at the National Alliance of Black School Educators Conference in Tampa, week ago, and also last week.
And we're all three going to be at the Suburban Superintendent's Roundtable on Friday. And we'll see about 100 or so local superintendents where we network and interact. And these are topics that tend to come up.
Those are just examples of other conferences that we'll be going to as well. And that's one of the strengths our firm has, is we're very proactive, we're not reactive. We're going to sit back and see who's going to apply. We're going to be out, we already have that out there, knocking on the doors and saying, I heard about this position, et cetera, et cetera.
Can we talk about, or can you talk a little bit about, so the week of December 5th or 12th, consultants begin formal and informal recruiting, positions posted, and then week of January 9th, consultants will conduct stakeholder meetings. Is there a meeting that happens between you guys and us before a posting happens to have a deeper discussion around that job description and what we're looking for, what needs to be tweaked? I mean, where does that conversation happen?
What we'll be doing is working with the staff here at the district and developing a vacancy notice with that, which will have a lot of information on there. And that would be the information that we would then provide and put on our advertisement for that as well.
We have a format that we use for most of our posting. Obviously, the information that goes into this customized district because it's not too our alike. But the format puts it in a perspective where we can then submit it to all other venues, and they take that format and then adapt it to their venue and get it out. So colleges and universities pick it up. We have no idea, how many different places see it, but we wind up getting the applications from people and asking them, where did you hear this? Oh, Washington State University Placement Office. And so it gets kind of viral.
So I think my question is less about format and more about content. So is there an opportunity to have conversations with the board to get board input on what the board is also looking for in terms of potential candidates?
I think she's
Yeah.
referring to the profile. I
Right.
think she's referring to after we've actually conducted those focus group interviews and talked to different ones, and that's when the board come in. We finalize that because even though we put out the job posting, what you're actually looking for, it comes from the community, it comes from you guys, and you tell us what you're looking for, and there is a conversation. But that's after the, what we have here, what date is that?
Actually, we moved that to the 17th of January.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that'll be after that 17th of January. That day we come in and we just meet with everyone, starting in the morning into the evening, and anyone else who wants to talk to besides board members. And then that evening, we go back and compile all of that information, bring it back to you as a board, and let you look at it and tweak it and make sure that it is what you want that we will put out there. That comes later. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's an opportunity for that. The week of the 9th, is it moved to the 17th, or the week of the 23rd?
We actually selected the date of the 17th. That all works.
Yeah, let's,
So we already got to there.
yeah, let's see if we get there. So let's clarify that, as Dr. Harrison Williams said, what we're going to be doing in the notice of the vacancies, putting in there something like, this school district located in the south suburbs of Chicago, it serves students from, how many students. So this is just really more, here's a little bit about the school district and why you want to apply to that. Then, in just a moment, that's a perfect segue, we'll talk about then what are the characteristics and the attributes that we're looking for, that job description, so to speak, for that superintendent. So before we move beyond that, we just want to make sure, are you okay then with us doing the online advertisement in the Education Week and AASA? That's so we can move forward.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Does anyone have any other comment on that, or?
Well, the board's had no conversations about how individual feelings about national search versus local search, where we'd like to ideally look to draw in from. Anyone has?
Nowadays, Christine, they all become national searches because of the electronic explosion.
I understand, except if we want to put something in, spend money to put something in a national magazine, it's a conversation the board just hasn't had. And I would like, I guess my preference would have been that the board would have had some conversations about what we were looking for in a superintendent before we go out to advertise for a superintendent. It's hard to decide where to use your advertising dollars most wisely if you don't know exactly where you're hoping to recruit from or what individual board members feel about it. So I think it's a difficult question to ask if we haven't had any input on that.
Okay, well, do you have any input?
I'd like to represent this.
Okay.
I appreciate the fact that you are looking at online searching because you can't do more. I'm looking forward to hearing about a little bit more about the process about getting the board engaged. I think I had the same question that Michelle had initially that I'm listening to, and you're right. You need to get that broad perspective because I don't think it's the superintendent, although we hire, this is still just 7 people, so the fact that you get input from our community and then allow us then to weigh that, I think is the best approach. I think sometimes when we sit and have this conversation with just us, it becomes about just us, as opposed to hearing more broadly what our stakeholders need. So my opinion is I actually appreciate the broad approach and then bringing it back in. My mind was going a different way initially, but you're going to get to our teachers, our students, our administrators, all of those, and that becomes our role as the policymakers of those decisions, which is to take the different opinions, the different perspectives, and then weigh that. I think starting with our opinions, might color your search, which I don't want to do, because this is just 7 people who have 7 different opinions and 7 different experiences. So getting those stakeholders in, starting out here and doing this, I don't think that there's any danger in not hearing just that perspective when you go out and search. I think when you're looking for a superintendent candidate, there are some basic things that we need, and I think the search can bring us a broader pool from which to go. I think that's when you narrow it down. So I think the idea of using, spending the $800, $400, $500, I think is most appropriate, as opposed to us giving you this narrow line and saying, we want just this, and then you go get just this, because we may miss that amazing candidate that came from downstate DeKalb or somewhere else because we gave them this. So that is my opinion, my perspective, and if there is something different, because initially I was thinking when Michelle was just like, why aren't you talking to us first? But then as I'm hearing this, and I'm listening to myself in my brain, which is what we're trying to get away from, which is a small group making a decision for a larger community.
The other thing that we want to point out, too, we talk about stakeholder groups, you're part of the stakeholder group, so we'll have a one-on-one interview with each of you, in person, on the phone, whatever works for your schedule, doing that as well. So it really is all of the stakeholders that we get your opinions on what you be looking at on that.
So you only still have individual opinions. At what point do you reach consensus? When do you search for consensus opinions? Not till late in the process then.
That's in the vetting process when we present the candidates to you. We're going to go through a little bit. We do a workshop. It's been a couple weeks since we were out there, but we do a pre-interview workshop when we talk about getting to consensus and how the end result needs to have some semblance of consensus, because people will not take this job on a 4-3 vote or a 5-2. You've got to come together around the commonalities of the candidate that you choose. We help you do that. So that's a little further down the line. What we're trying to do is kind of get the little basics out of the way, get us in here on that day. We normally name a contact person. Sometimes the board, it's the board president. Sometimes there's an actual liaison set up for us that we can bounce certain questions off of, because there isn't the opportunity to come and ask you every little thing. And we don't. You hired us to do these things, so we don't want that to bother you. We think we know what we're doing, and we're going to help you, and we want your input, and we want to be able to build a profile. As Sheila just said earlier, we want to build a profile that reflects all of your thinking and the thinking of all your stakeholders, including people who don't have children in the school.
But you don't build a consensus profile, do you?
No. We give you the data.
When you talk about consensus, you're talking about reaching a decision upon candidates you're presenting.
Correct.
So what I'm talking about is consensus in what the board is looking for in a candidate.
What we'll do is
that-
that's a great question, Christine.
It is a good question.
Through the stakeholder process, we'll start to see emerging themes that will come out of that. And just as an example, one of those themes might be that they want a superintendent who's going to be very visible, he or she is very visible, and establish credibility and trust might be one that would come up. So we'll start to see those common themes, and as was referenced by my associates here, we'll put together for you a profile of what those common themes are for the board to look at.
And what, can I ask a follow-up question to that? What numbers do you consider useful, baseline numbers for attendance at those meetings and response to those surveys to put that profile that we're talking about together?
We'd like to have the surveys, we'd like to get several hundred.
Okay, and what about attendance at?
Attendance at meetings,
stakeholder
it
meetings?
really varies.
But what do you consider successful? I mean, if you get 10 people, is that input you use, or do you?
When we're in the district for the day, when we come in at noon and stay till there's an open community meeting, we're probably going to run through a couple hundred people during that day. In various ways. In addition to each of you, all 7 of you will have some.
And are those the numbers, I guess my concern is, if you don't get to those numbers, how valid are your results, how are your profile results? That's my concern. I just want to know kind of what the...
Right, well, we'll look at it for both the contact that we have during that day, as Mark said, and then also the number of surveys that we did, because we take that data and put that together for that as well.
That's what we always encourage the district to get the word out. We can only do so much in the district.
And I'm sorry,
Good. Oh,
No.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, some of the things we have control over. Like, for example, we know we're gonna interview each of you, okay? And we know we're gonna probably interview your administrative team, cabinet, building principals, your teachers. We do have control over that, so we're gonna get those numbers that way. We do rely heavily on the district principals to get the word out to the parents and to you to get the word out to your other elected officials that may will have something to say, or those parents that do not, those community members that do not have children in the district, those taxpayers, you know, will rely heavily on you because you know who they are. And so we need you to bring those people in. And whoever we have, that's who we deal with.
That's what I wanted to delve in a little bit deeper. And I know you're saying the week of the 9th. So, and the 9th, okay, the week of the 17th. I'm looking at the week of the 9th.
Because we're just getting back from
Yeah.
Christmas break, and that's what I told
So we're gonna move that to the 17th, but I just wanted to know a little bit more, and I know, just remind me, 'cause I know it was a few weeks ago you were here. How is it that the parents, I want to know how you will take, I know the survey is out there, but will you hold a series of meetings so the parents can come and attend and have a voice, or how is that process? Because I think that's a very important process, a very important piece to this as well.
Absolutely.
We will.
There's a number of ways that we can do this, because, you know, you have the parents that are home during the day, so you can meet with them. Then you have the parents that come in on the train, so you're gonna be here that evening, there should be a group for them. So, you know, there's a lot of ways, because we know we have that working class, and then we also have stay-at-home moms and dads and whatever that we can meet with during the day. But you're here the entire day and half the night, probably sometimes 8 or 9 o'clock, depending on this work schedule.
So will only be one day, or?
It's usually one
We
day, but.
usually do one day. We try and get people in. We do deal with this with boards a lot of times. We want everybody's input. We want everybody's input. You're giving every single person the opportunity with the electronic survey. There's no way a person can say, I didn't have a chance to give my input. What
So that's
happens,
gonna go out to all?
everybody,
Okay.
whether they have children in the school, the word is, we get it out electronically in every way possible we can. We work with the district to do that. And that's where we get really the bulk of the response. People don't come out as much. I hate to say this, but people just don't come out as much in the evening when they can do an online survey. And so we've seen numbers drastically drop since the advent of the surveys. We still will be there, and we'll still open it up. But the fact is, we try and focus them to come at a certain time, rather than, oh, I'll come this time, and then somebody will come up, and I'll come another time. So we try and get it all at once, and we can all hear it. And so we hear it, we take notes, and then we put it in our summary report. We give that to you, and you have that, and it helps guide you in your selection process. It helps give you a pulse of what people are saying. And again, it's a third party doing it, so no one can say the Board of Education, you know, had this focus this way, or the Board of Education skewed the results. No, we're doing it. So it takes it totally off your shoulders, and we'll take care of that. And we could have 100 meetings, and it's still going to get us about the same.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity for parents who are at home, an opportunity for
We will
parents who
have
are
that,
working.
yes, yes.
To come.
That's why we have it.
And to have that. So-
If I jump for a second.
Steve?
Okay, so my, and this kind of addresses my earlier question in terms of, you know, if a parent wants to be part of a stakeholder group and can make it within that timeframe, is there pretty much guarantee that they will have an opportunity?
Yeah, show up.
Absolutely.
You're going to publicize, the district's going to publicize these meetings. It's not just going to be some secret thing. It's going to be, come this time, afternoon, evening, representatives will be there. We'll give you all the opportunity, you know, to look forward. Again, we're looking forward and trying to build this profile of what you're going to be selecting, who you're going to be selecting as the new leader. We want to keep them focused on that. We try to get away from people coming and talking about their own children and the special needs that children have. We're really here to get you the best leader that there is out in the market. then somehow or another, you know, everybody's input just gets right fit in like a glove, and the report comes out, and you look at it, and say, that's kind of what I was thinking. Well, that's a goal anyway.
2 other points too. The survey would also get paper and pencil. We'll have that in each of the schools if people would rather fill it out that way. Also, we can meet in various locations. One could be at the middle school, there could be one in elementary school. That's where we'll be asking, as Mark said before, that contact person to give us guidance on where would be the best place for us to meet to maximize the turnout that we would get for that. Yes?
I don't know, I get attention for a question.
Oh.
Yeah, just a couple things is, so I'm very excited about this process. Is there something that you can give us, even like leaving this meeting or shortly after, that we can start doing a little drilling out there? Because there are a lot of, there are social media pieces, that, you know, 161 parents or moms and everything, where that we can just say, this is coming up, you're gonna start to see things out this, please consider, there's gonna be an online survey, mark your calendar, the 17th, mark it. So is there something that, any verbiage or wording, so we can be consistent and let them know, this is the content, this is what we're doing, and get proactive?
So what we would do with that is work with the person within your district who's the community relations person or the public relations person.
Who's the public relations person?
Oh, another job.
Anyway, we would work through them to do exactly what you're saying. Put it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media that we're using, and any other communications that we have.
And the reason I'm asking that, because you're saying we'll put it out in the district, and our community works really well if they get something from somebody they know. And that's what I was just saying, making sure that we just have a piece of consistent communication so that we've got our networks for getting out.
The key is we don't want it too early and it gets lost.
Right.
We want to keep it constant. Keep reminders, email blast every week or so.
Put it in the school newsletters. There's a lot of different ways that we'll communicate that. That's why it's important to get these dates down so that we can start to work on that communication part, which is a challenge.
And then my very last question, and is Sherry here? I saw her.
Yes.
Hi, I don't even know if this is, but with our school district being very, very diverse, I'm not sure specifically at your school, is there a reason or necessity for any type of survey that maybe bilingual, that we can get parents involved who may not have the second language?
We have Spanish versions.
You do?
Absolutely.
So I just want to make sure that we're getting all of those voices.
I appreciate that, thank you so much.
Okay.
That's my question.
So just to piggyback, just for 2 seconds. So to me, I think it's less about, let's make sure people have the specific date on their calendar this early, and more about the community knowing that there is a process that is in place, and we are communicating that process so that people don't think that we're doing things behind closed doors.
Is there a presser tonight? Is there a press representative?
I'm from the HF.
Good, okay, get this. We're going to rely on you.
What we would do, that's a great question, is when we finish tonight, we'll take our notes and get it together and then give it to the PR, community relations, et cetera, person. She'll take a look at that, say, yeah, that's where we are with that, and that would be posted on your website too. And anywhere else that you would want to publicize that as well. So they can see the process from the very beginning, from the interim, all the way to the very end with that.
Yeah, and that's very common for us to, it's called, generally it's called a superintendent search update. And sometimes when you hit a milestone, you put a new thing in there, but it's constantly on the website, so people can see.
So to go back to the question on the table was as far as the advertisement goes with that, as far as this is really just to get the position out there. Here's where it is, how many students are being served, et cetera, et cetera. And then we kind of jumped ahead, but that was good, so you can kind of see how all the process will fit together with that. Where would you like us to go regarding the advertising requirement? Christine, if we answered your question? Or?
I don't know what the distribution overlap is for these different vehicles. I don't know who subscribes to them, who accesses them online. I don't know how much duplicity you've got in all of these. I'm an old person, I want to know how many hits you're actually getting and how many independent ones I'm paying for and how many duplicates I'm paying for.
Well, I can say that Ed Week, certainly everybody who is in administration would have Ed Week.
Right.
We just look at it, you know, I always say, look at it with a little L and a big L.
But I get the newspaper every week, I look at it every week. I've been doing it for a number of years, and everybody looks at it every week, whether online or that hard copy, so.
The hard copy comes out every week?
I believe so.
Yes.
And that's-
The AASA posting is probably the most critical. That's the American Association of School Administrators, that's the National Superintendent's
Seems to
Association.
be more targeted.
That's targeted, that's the group you really see. And from that posting, there's all of these other little spin-offs that pick that off. The county regional offices pick it off. So that's really a real key. If you wanted to do anything and only one thing, that would be the one we would recommend. And that's the one that's proved the best. We have such a local network that we certainly don't rely on that solely. We're going to be talking to people, I think you expressed it earlier, who we'll be tapping on the shoulder, who we're going to be approaching. That's usually what this business actually takes precedence on. Tapping people, talking to people, responding to initial inquiries. And there have been many already. And so the bottom line is, you want to just make sure that we're not missing any avenue. Those two vehicles will probably guarantee us, with, again, the respective pickups after those, that we're not missing anything, even though our primary source is person-to-person contact.
I guess it's difficult because the board's giving you no direction on how, even the board hasn't had any talk about how much experience they'd like this person to have. If we only want to look at a pool who's already been a superintendent, if we have any willingness to accept one that's would be coming in for the first superintendency, if we need a doctorate, if we don't need a doctorate.
We're gonna get all of that information after the profile. Right now, what we're doing is just collecting applications. You know, we're collecting applications from people that are interested in actually looking at the school district. Then we're gonna be very specific when we go back and narrow that pool down. Later on, you see down here, we're gonna narrow it down to about 10, 12, maybe sometimes 16 people that we will interview based on the information that we receive from you guys after we do the profile. And so from that information, we narrow that pool down. Right now, we're just collecting applications, and we're personally asking successful superintendents, you know, to apply. And so from that group is where we narrow that down. We will have that information afterwards. We're not skipping a step, and it's the same thing that you had shared. It's the same thing. We will get to that point.
You're just casting.
We're casting a wide.
Yeah, I think I know where you're getting.
Yeah.
The posting and the job announcement is not specific. It's generic.
Right.
We have demographics of the district, number of students, where the location is, that type of thing. But the detailed stuff, that's where we do our screening based upon all the information we got on the 17th and through the survey. And we'll share that with you so you'll know where the general thinking is amongst your parents, teachers, staff members, all that stuff.
So your philosophy is to be indiscriminate in sharing that posting and in lieu of targeting a specific audience that we
Based on
identify
what
as
you-
people would like.
Yeah, the audience is small to begin with. And, you know, we can't predict numbers, but, you know, we're seeing in the neighborhood of 30, 40 applicants. So it's a small pool. I know you just finished one where you got 50 and 50 plus. 60, good. That's what we want.
62, you get it.
We want more so that we can use our filtering tools, the information that you give us, to filter through and find the right match. That's a dream to have that. And that's all coming down the pipe when we get through this. This meeting is always a little bit, a lot of questions. This is the first time many of you have been involved in something like this. You may have done it on a personal note or your business, but this is a little bit different on the professional cycle. It's a very closed and select group. There are only 900 school districts in Illinois, and there aren't that many qualified superintendents floating around. So we want to be able to network with them and find the right ones based upon all the information. Sheila said that, Phil said that earlier.
I just want to reiterate, Bill, that I do appreciate this approach, because I was going, when you were asking this question, just my professional life is to go into ask very specific questions, so I know targeted, we're going to go and find this exactly. However, now I'm going to hire a superintendent for, we have such a wonderfully diverse community and even just wonderful opposing views, even just between 7 people about what works. So there may be something that I don't even know I'm looking forward to. And hearing from all of our stakeholders can help that piece go along. So I'm actually very excited about that. You know, get it done, part of this, it's like, just go slow, so we go fast. So.
It's great to be excited. We're moving along at a very nice clip. We're going to be fine. Yes.
Do it right, and do it best.
So going back to the advertisement of, this is the general advertisement, I guess you'd say the wide net we're looking at for that. You want us to put it in both American Association of School Administrators and Education Week?
I think that, from my perspective, I think that's a good idea. Certainly, I think we should serve a broader net than narrow one, for $400. I think it's certainly worth it to do the best we can to get the right person. Anyone have any objecting views on that?
Yeah, I would say small. I would skip that week if it duplicates most of what you would catch, and if it doesn't really hit as targeted a pool as the others do. Your comments before were that most of your candidates come through your website and through direct outreach, correct? Yeah, I don't see need to duplicate our efforts. But,
My perspective again is, if it's duplicative, I would have had a question on it, but I don't want to miss that one outlier that we don't get from our targeted search. And if this was a $1,500, $3,000 something, I would say skip it. But for a $400 investment to possibly get that one who may be a passive candidate who might be reading that online for something else and get to this, I would say this investment is worth it.
It also gets the name of the district out.
I would like to know, just even for our this for application as well, though, as we go through this, because the main thing to learn for us is past and know what types of hits we were getting. If we are looking at new and going to, and we can may not be something we know for now, but it would be something that I'd like to hear, even as we do a post-mortem from the search afterwards, I'm sure we'll do.
The only way we really know is by asking the candidates. Where did you first hear about this?
Yeah.
Where did this position come to your attention?
But for me, that's post-mortem information, getting the widest net, and not missing that one is more important.
And also that advertising is not based on a principle, if they saw it once and then they're convinced. Sometimes if you see it a couple times, that's when you start to.
That's the one-month posting, that's true.
So just to make sure that I understand, just to clarify, are you saying the AAS? AASA, that's about $400?
I think it's $465.
That's for a month. And then the education week is about $400.
Very
So-
similar to that.
So I wouldn't be opposed to doing both as well. So we would make sure that we are getting, things from both, so.
Michelle, they were asking opinions about whether or not we should use all of these sources, if there's a possibility of putting candidates or opportunities, or if we, one being 400, one being 465, if we want to leave out one, or what are your thoughts? So that's where we're going with it.
And there's 3, I'm sorry, 3, the Ed Weekly, are there 3 of them or 2?
2. One, BWP's website is no cost.
Right. Illinois Job Bank is no cost.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, because I think that there might be some duplicates, but I know that there might be also a population of folks who look at Ed Weekly who would not be looking at the other. I mean, Ed Weekly has a broader audience, in my opinion. So.
How about the rest of you?
I think we're,
And
John, are you fine?
Oh.
Yeah. You said okay.
And those are directly billed, there's no markup on that, we just pass the cost on. So the next thing we're looking at is the week of, it said January 9, but it should be that next week, is obviously coming back from the winter break with that.
They'll give people an excuse not to participate. I'm tired from winter break. We're giving you no excuses, it better not snow that day either.
So one of the dates we were looking at is to have it on Tuesday, January 17. And that would be the one we talked about with the stakeholders. As my associates have already mentioned, this would be something we would come in late morning, so we can hit the people like in the morning. Then we have all the stakeholders involved with it, and then have, of course, another meeting in the evening as well. Again, that would involve your teachers, administrators, support staff. If you have a group like an intergovernmental group that you would want us to do, other youth serving agencies, we would then work again with the community relations person and the PR person to send out invites using the mechanisms that you use for that, so that they would have a personal invitation to come to that.
For the 17th, just a note, as we do advertise, you're going to be coming off of a long three-day weekend, and so I want to make sure that we're getting it right, because Martin Luther King Day is on the 16th, and we opposes the district.
Right.
Just from a,
Right, that's what we moved it back to try to.
Yeah, okay, just, okay.
Is that
That's
a,
good for me, 17.
17th, okay.
If you're not, excuse me, Steve, if you're not available in person to come in sometime during that day or evening, we'll reach you somehow on a phone, meet you for coffee. We'll make sure that we accommodate each one of you members of the Board of Education with a one-on-one interview. I'm sorry, Steve.
I was going to say, is this, and maybe this is a principal's question, is this a day that people are typically have high attendance? I mean, do people look at this as a long weekend plus one, or is this something where reliably people are available in the district?
Are you talking about the day after?
Day after MLK Day? We have the day off.
I think people are normally, I mean, especially since they just got off of a 2-week break.
Yeah, they want the kids back in.
Good, sounds great. Just asked. Okay, yeah, sounds great. I'm good for the 17th. Anyone else have a conflict?
We have a timeline? I'm sorry, do you need us all day on the 17th?
No. We need a half hour for each of you.
This has nothing to do with us.
So we don't have to do that schedule tonight.
Right, what we would do is work with Fran, I get the schedule set up, and then we will then ask you to tell us when you're available, like if Mark,
No,
if you're
that's
not
what
available on the
just Steve
17th.
Steve asked, I
We're saying
thought there was a
stakeholders, like,
misunderstanding.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's why I was kind of asking,
Right.
so.
And we can have time during that day if you're available, if not, we can do it another day, or we can do it by phone, we've done that many times before too, but we want to have quality time with each board member, as they said, about a half hour to do that as well. I think that's very important.
Listen to your thinking on this whole process. We don't talk, we do all the time. We take notes. So that day, what we'll have to start doing, and, we have winter break coming up, in a couple of weeks, we still have plenty of time, we'll start putting together something and work with the district, start the advertising process, rely on our friends in the press to get that started, to get people thinking about it and have that date to see. The staff is going to be here. And, we'll have central locations. There'll be at least 3 of us, maybe 4 of us. We can meet with a lot of groups. We can do 3 or 4 simultaneously. So we will give everybody an opportunity. But our real focus is always going to be, no excuse, go online and do the survey. If you don't have access to a computer, you can come and do it in the school or a paper pencil. So we're looking for several hundred. A good turnout is 400 or 500.
County area. So the next key date would then be the week of the 23rd, when we would present the profile results to the board, as we explained before. Those profile results would come to the board, and then they would then be posted online too, because this is a public document that we want to see. Here's what we're looking for in the next superintendent with that. So for the week of the 23rd,
do you have a board meeting?
There is a committee of the whole meeting that night, 23rd.
Yes, that would be perfect. That would be just-
So you want to do the 23rd then?
Yeah, that sounds great.
You're all here committed to the 23rd, otherwise we move it to the 24th.
No, the 23rd is,
Okay. No problem. And that would be 7-ish?
7 is when we start, so we'll jump first.
And we like to present this profile in an open meeting, so they're going to think here, and then we will leave you with some hard copy, and then move on forward from there.
So we got the 23rd. This is almost going to smoothly. This is great. And then we'll
Picking
close.
dates is never fun.
All right, and then we'll close the applications around the 27th. The week of January 30 is when we would then screen the candidates based on that profile. And that, of course, would be us doing that. And then we're looking at the week of February 6th to present the candidates to the board, and of course, that would be in closed session. That would be a little longer because it's really two purposes, if you might remember from our presentation. One is to present the candidates to you, and the second one will be to do training on the interview process, and we'll walk you through that as well.
If you remember when we were here a couple weeks ago, and I'm not holding you accountable for remembering all that stuff, we talked about one of the most important pieces is this 1.5 to 2 hour workshop that we do with the board, all of us, all of you, sharing the candidates, information about the candidates, and then walking through some potential questions, walking through a scoring rubric so that you can be on the same page in evaluating each of the candidates, and get you ready, perfectly ready for your interviews when you conduct them. I think that's what Phil's looking for, a date for that next.
So that would be during that week of the 6th of February. What works for your schedule during that time?
I think we do a meeting on the 13th.
So you've got to think about this.
So that's your box.
You're going to interview them, but you really won't do it in context of a meeting. You're going to have probably 6 people to talk to. You're going to need about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes each. You're going to need multiple. Oh,
Is this
We're
the training or?
We're on.
oh yeah, I'm sorry.
You're one step.
I'm one step ahead. I'm on the next one. Say what I said, I'm going to be right there.
Do you guys have a meeting already scheduled for the 6th?
No.
That's all right.
So is there anything that week is a better time than another during that week?
Does anyone have a conflict with the 6th? No. No. Anyone else foreseeable?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
February 6th?
Yeah, that works for me.
What time would you like to have that meeting?
7 o'clock?
Going once, going twice?
Wait a minute, this is the day we'll be here.
Just the training, 2.5 hour workshop.
And receiving the candidates.
And, right, sorry, receiving the candidate.
They'll probably take about 2 hours.
Okay.
We can finish about 7 to 9.
We can't start at 6:30.
Oh, we can start, it's fine.
Is that what you want? Sure.
I will confirm.
6:30?
6:30.
Yeah.
6:30 on February 6th. Everyone on with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we got it. Now, as I misspoke,
There you go. Go ahead, Mark.
we're ready. So the candidates that you're going to see, we say prepare for 6, an hour, hour and 15 minutes apiece. So you're going to have to set the schedule probably multiple days in order to give a fair assessment. We have boards that'll start, at 6:30, 6 o'clock, and do maybe 3 in an evening, and then the second evening 3. Some will do 2, 2, and 2, 3 evenings. Some will do weekends, Saturday.
I'm sorry, I do have to pause and go back just for another conversation we had. And this goes for the training piece.
Right.
We have talked about from true transparency and making sure that we're keeping people engaged, that individuals who are going to be running for the board, that they be invited to, or potentially to engage in interviewing, because they will be the ones that can take this forward. If that is something that we're still considering, will we know by February who the candidates would be, and would be invited to this interview? Or
The candidates will know the week of December 12th, 17th. So at that point, we'll know more. I would suggest we come back at this question again, once we know on the 12th and 17th, we can revisit that on how that would occur.
Okay.
Depending upon what that would be.
Okay.
The,
It was just a very good conversation about,
right.
you know, there had to be the support and the ones who would be taking over, because we have 4 board seats up, so that's important.
Right. And it will be for the candidates as well.
Yeah.
As you know, in the interview process, it's a two-way street. You're interviewing
Right.
them, and they're interviewing you at the same time, so that's important.
Yeah.
One of the questions they're going to ask is, so what's the board election look like? Because they're going to want to know how many of you sitting there, but we can really cross that bridge once we get there.
Okay.
For the interview process, as we said, we will set up the interviews, we will train for the interviews. We do not sit in on the interviews, that is a board interview, so you would be doing that. We, of course, are available to have any questions during that time, obviously, but we physically would not sit on the interviews. We felt that's the best practice to use, since this is the board's responsibility to do with that. So as Mark said, we need to pick out some dates during that time that's going to work for you. Probably 2, as he said, 3 candidates one and 3 candidates on another.
You think you'd want to do 3 per night, or 2?
I would say 2. What do you think?
If we can go, if we're looking at schedules, I mean, I can be somewhere as early as 5:30,
Okay.
at night.
What's the earliest, excuse me, what is the earliest that we could possibly, meet? Can everyone meet at 5:30? Is that a conflict?
Give dates and then we'll have to work.
Okay, so, the 6th, we would have the training.
6:30 and stuff.
6:30 and 6. So then we're looking at Tuesday the 7th, Wednesday the 8th, Thursday the 9th, Friday the 10th. Is there a particular date between Tuesday and Friday which works best for everybody?
I'm on the 10th, I'm on the 10th.
10th, you're out of 10th.
9 and 10.
9th and 10th. Okay, so I'm fine for either.
You could also do it next week, you're
Yeah.
not bound to that.
You just don't want to spread it too far apart.
Sure,
You don't
I understand.
remember.
But either one of those 2 weeks, whatever works best for you guys.
So if we looked at the 7th and the 8th, I mean, we'd be together probably for 3 nights. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then one day next the following week.
Yeah, board meeting that Monday, the 13th. 14th is Valentine's Day, you're all loving on each other. And
And we love it.
It's too much time, so then we did 7th and 8th, and then did the 15th, then you're thinking too much time.
Well, we're going to be presenting the candidates to you on the 6th and do the training. We will then need to confirm everything and then contact the candidates. So probably having it the next night
Oh, that.
would not be good, get a little time. Plus, you don't want to probably be out 3 nights in a row, that you get a little bit of a breather in there. It could be later on that week.
Okay, so, okay, do you feel that, again, maybe this is the question, that a week apart
The
from?
8th is fine. February 8th will work, because we have a day, yeah.
Okay, but just in terms of week between first round or first set and the second set,
Are you thinking, what, February 8th, and what's the second date?
15th, is that look good for everyone?
So you're going to do 2 instead of 3?
3 per night then?
I think we could do 3 per night. If they're about an hour.
Hour 15.
Starting at 5:30?
Yeah.
Yeah, starting at 5:30.
It's doable. It's again, you know your capacity, you know what your commitments are. That's really, it's hard for us to say, hey, do it this way, do it that way.
All right.
But we'll make it work. The candidates are gonna come whenever you set it up, so.
Does anyone object to adding the 16th and spreading it so that we have two candidates. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're saying add the third?
Yeah, the 8th, the 15th, and the 16th, just so there's 3 days that we can look at 2 per night, so we're not burning out by the time we get to the third candidate.
You will need some additional time after that to then to come, as Christine had mentioned before, about coming to a consensus. So we'll talk about that. So having been 3 would allow you time on that third evening to then do the processing on that, so.
Is the 16th also feasible for everyone?
Right now, this is open, so I'm not putting this in, so if we, however, everybody else is going to do it.
Well, we're here in November telling you to look into February.
Great.
So February 8, 15, 16, we're just making a note of this so we can, okay, starting at 5:30.
Starting at 5:30.
Excellent.
Good.
You can build in some time on the 16th for discussion afterwards since we started pretty early.
That works out well. And then for the week of the February 20 is when you would interview the finalists. That could be 2 or 3, depending upon how that all works out.
There was a desire that I don't see up here, and I don't know if it made it back to you as far as comments, that if there was an opportunity to hear the candidate in public speaking or how they engage, or I can't remember the specific comment, but there was some interest from folks on the board. So if anybody want to speak, do you want to talk about that? There, no, it was.
Vaguely remember, but yeah, it was,
You might remember this might came out.
no, it's not, and I don't know where we heard it, or I don't know, we thought that was a great idea, or the final 2 candidates, and we want to keep, the opportunity to hear them in a public.
Like, for example, if you had a community forum or something like that, and they would, yeah, I think that's.
The only issue with that, if we go with a confidential search, which we tend to do, because if you don't, you lose candidates. Trust me, they will not come if we have their names splattered all over, so.
It's one of the key reasons that we do the profile involving all the stakeholders is exactly that. We are all saying, here's what we want to see in that, but it's up to the board to make that final decision. As Mark said, and Sheila did too, some candidates will say, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm okay if I'm the final candidate, because then I can tell my board and my, et cetera. But, yeah, so that's a little.
It's a tough spot. It really is. There's no real easy way to do this. You know?
No, makes sense, it was just something that was brought up. So-
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
But it's still, we do need to figure out what that looks like as part of a profile. Because we
Exactly.
absolutely want someone who's extremely comfortable addressing an audience, a variety of.
Right.
Some of that's going to come out of your 2 interviews with them.
Yeah.
True, but I'm also, some people are,
Oh, yeah.
yes.
But nothing that
Who
can.
hasn't been there?
But nothing can be done in that second interview. There could be, you could say, we want you to prepare to address such and such issue, and they make a presentation, so you really have an idea to do that too. So there are ways to measure their presentation skills and how are they as far as being an active listener, that type of thing too. But we want to look at that week of February 20, 2 different dates.
And it just will be you and the candidate for dinner.
I'm only available Monday and Tuesday out of town, Wednesday, and then next Wednesday.
I'm fine with Monday or Tuesday.
20th is President's Day. It shouldn't really matter. Yeah.
Anyone have-
20th and
I'm
21st.
available, just like, I'm available on the 21st and 22nd, beyond that.
There's something to go on for the rest of the week.
So,
I am too.
the 21st.
So 20, 21.
Okay, so,
27 and 28, oh, you can't do the 20th.
21st.
Are you back, Christine?
I'm not on my calendar. I get back that next Wednesday, which is the 29th.
the first. How about
And you're the following 20 and 21.
the 18th, is that possible? That's Saturday?
On Saturday?
Is it pushing it? Okay, would that be a conflict for everybody?
Like on the work though, yeah, the last interview was like 16, 60 days later, talking about finding.
Well, we get double time for doing dinner on the 18th.
You get triple time.
It's not doing,
21st is not?
okay?
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Is it February 20 and 21 work?
I'm sorry,
February, I'm just trying to summarize what you said.
the
February
21st
20,
sounds like it worked for everybody, not the 20th.
the 20th does not work?
Who does it not work for? Okay, right.
The 22nd does not work.
Right, and Josh.
So
Okay,
what about the 18th and the 21st?
What are the 19th?
Or 18th and
We've
19th?
got these on weekends.
it's fine, 18, 19.
Okay, so let me just say,
Okay.
I'm out of town. For my
And you-
company, my job, from the 16th, and I return on the evening of the 20th.
Okay.
And I am back on again in 21st. Oh, yeah. So
You may not be able to.
I don't have to do it.
What time will you be coming back that evening?
They're not here.
Well, they're not here.
Right. So I think we have the most on the 20th and the 21st.
Okay. What time do you get back on the 20th?
Could you Skype in?
My flight, I think actually lands at 10.
At night.
At night?
That takes care of it.
Yeah. You need your airport.
So you wouldn't even be able to Skype in for the interview?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so and this would be down to the final.
This is your final two.
So are you okay, Mayor, with meeting this in the 20th?
I mean, I'm okay with it.
Okay, well,
Unless we do the 18th and the 21st.
No, she's doing it.
Oh, right.
You're gonna have 16, yeah, so that really-
okay, so,
I'm sorry, you're going on the 16th, which is what we were talking about having last.
15?
No, I leave it on the 16th.
Oh, yeah.
I don't leave it, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We have 8, 5, 8, 15, and 16.
Yeah,
Right,
she
so I'll
just-
make sure
she's
you're
gone.
there on 16.
Sorry, 17th.
Oh, 17th.
Oh,
Seventeen,
good.
okay.
Okay.
That's
All
good.
right.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
February 20 and 21,
okay,
that works?
yes. John?
The only other thing I was going to suggest is doing a vote on the 21st, early and late. Coffee and dinners,
Yeah.
something creative to try to allow for everybody to
Could
attend.
most people be available at lunch? You can do lunch and dinner?
That's a possibility.
I could, yeah, I mean, I'm completely flexible at this point. So,
That's a thought, John.
whatever works for everybody else.
Yeah.
So have like a 20th will be the lunch, and the dinner for the other?
No,
Be well
Maryland,
known.
in order for Maryland to be there too, you're saying the
It'd be on the
21st.
21st.
Oh, the 21st.
21st lunch, 21st dinner, both of whom would be eating with, dining with
Are
the,
you all available?
yes, the 21st.
I'm good.
21st, we're all here. Yeah, lunch and then dinner.
So, 21st, okay.
Yeah, just.
Lunch?
We'll work out the schedule. You just give us the availability. We'll come up
February
with-
21st, you're available all that day.
Okay, yes.
John, will that work because I want to schedule this? You don't look at eggs.
I can do lunch, but I prefer to be in the city. I don't know that that works for everybody.
I can say,
I could do that too.
if that works. I mean, if-
Candidate will show up wherever you are.
Well,
No, I'm just saying, we have
We
to
all
come
kind of
in and
work.
schedule a kid, flex.
Okay, raise your hand if you could not do the city, that's a deal breaker.
I gotta give you a caution
Gonna
about
be,
this.
yeah.
You can all hear it or you don't.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, if you're meeting with this person and you're all together, it's a board meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Board meetings have to be held at locations that are convenient for attendance by the people in the school district. There's already been rulings that having a board meeting downtown Chicago when your school district is 30 miles away doesn't cut it. So the AG will find it to be an illegal meeting if someone complains.
It's good caution.
Sorry.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
no, lawyer.
Just throw
Are you
water
on?
on
Could we do breakfast in general? Would that be
Sure.
easier if we had to do breakfast down here?
I can probably, with this much notice, I can probably make lunch work in the
Okay.
And just kind of make a day of it, and then do dinner, I guess, in the area as well.
Right.
For me,
Okay, so lunch and then dinner.
the sleep lunch is fine.
So just to summarize, February 21, these last
21st.
for one candidate and dinner for the other candidate.
Yes.
And then we're saying probably the week of the 27th, that can change, would be then looking at the contract as offered. One option that you have, you don't need to make that decision tonight, is whether or not you want to do an on-site visit of the final candidate. If you do, that's fine, we'll plug that in there. But that's one thing that we'll need to talk about first.
2 board members only.
Yeah, 2 at the most. John will say 2 only. We still want to have obviously a forum there for that. So. What do you think about on-site visit? Do you think you would want to do that?
I think there's value in that. What's everyone else?
What do you expect to get out of an on-site with 2 people that you would not get from a extensive interview and 2 dinners and luncheons?
That's why Leslie had the board to do it nowadays.
No, if you can tell me, I'm just
Here's
asking.
what it would look like, then you can make a decision on that, would be that the candidate would set up a day where the 2 board members would come in and they might meet with, let's say, parent leaders, for example, might be one group. They then might meet with the teacher representatives, might be another group to discuss the superintendent. Probably take a tour of the district, walk around. During that time, you'll be interacting, obviously, with people with that. As Mark said, some boards do it, a lot of boards don't.
Yeah, I think we need to get some ground rules before that. Are we conducting a confidential search? Are we conducting an open
Right,
search?
that was the question I was gonna have, but is that gonna be still an issue?
Because at this point, you're down to your number 1 candidate.
Yeah.
This is only one, this will be the one that you decide you want. And that's who you visit, you would vote, you would visit with.
So if the one candidate, we're down to that final one, this is
You
our
have to decide,
opportunity,
this is who I want.
this is their opportunity really to say, this is really what I want to see as well. Or this is a kind of.
It's kind of an affirmation.
The final interview, you mean the last 2?
Is that being one of the parents type thing? Is this, I mean, I'm just.
It depends, like Mark said, if it's gonna be a confidential search. If usually during that time, like, for example, if you're gonna do the breakfast, so you'll have breakfast with them, and then you'll sit with them, and then you see them in a light setting, and then you would have them to travel throughout the district, visit classrooms, visit schools, and things like that.
If that's an open search.
If it's an open search, they can visit the schools, and they can go into classrooms and what have you. If not, they can just meet with you for breakfast, and then you have your second set of questions that you may have for them. And it's one of those, can you get along, one of those, because at that point, you already have a feeling. Remember, the relationship building starts in that first interview, and then you start, because everybody's going to be qualified, but now is going to be a good fit. And that's what it really narrows down to. We sit and break bread together, because, this relationship has got to be strong.
Is this a decision we have to make today, like, what
No.
time, right?
No.
Right.
No, we said we had time, we just want to take the process.
Just out of curiosity, I move on this. Do these tend to be kind of awkward at all? I mean, is there any feedback on this?
You need the interviews.
The site visits?
The site visits.
Oh, the site visits?
Yes, they can
I
be
haven't seen
awkward.
any lately.
But, and most of the time they're set up,
Yeah.
they set up.
Well, that's my other part of that was.
I think that's the last thing you need to worry about.
All right.
Okay.
Really.
Oh, I apologize, there is one, their initial interviews, they're with us, are there, so we have principals and stuff, we'll have parents, other people that are on that interview committee. This is a no, right? Because you're doing.
This is the board.
This is your responsibility,
All right, great.
statutory responsibility.
And so, in closing then, if you want to do a site visit, we can plug that in, that can be determined later, but around the week of the 27th, then, you would be making your final determination. So on the 1st of March, you have your person in place. The timing of that is perfect, and then you're out front of a lot of other searches on that, so you're going to get the very, very best candidates for that.
And again, this is all, there's a pathway to this, and you're taking this path, doing this in about 12 weeks, which is a really good timeline. We we have plans in case there's something changes, there's a bad weather day, keep saying that, but it happens. And so we've got backup, we'll be in touch. The key for us is who is our direct contact. In most places it's the board president. Are we assuming that, or are you going to select somebody? Because when these things come up, we're going to need a bounce off person. And so, Steve, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. It's a critical piece. And then, Fran, you're the day-to-day person that gets all our questions. But our job is to try and keep all this stuff off your plates. And keep this more or less, we'll do the backup stuff. And just prep you for the most important pieces. And give you all the information data to make the right decision. And I'm a big fan of, I used to be a big fan of having a much more open process. But the types of candidates that we're looking for who are successful, they're not going to risk their job. Their name's going to be splattered all over. So we have to be very careful and strategic in trying to guard their names, guard their position, where they're at, those kinds of things, so that we don't put anybody in jeopardy. And it ruins your reputation and ours too, when everyone's talking about the candidates. So we take this very seriously.
Process very open as far as. So we'll go back and finalize this, send that out, make sure we have that correct brand, and then we'll move that out. This is probably one of the hardest things you'll do as far as get your calendar.
The rest is easy.
Just one last question. So when the initial announcement goes out, there's no mention of salary or anything like that?
Regionally competitive. We're going to need you to come up with something for us.
Right, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something.
Okay, here's what the candidates are going to say when they contact us. They're going to say, what's the board like? And two, where's the compensation? In whatever order.
Sure.
Did I miss anything at that one?
Yeah.
That is very.
Contacted when we contact, right?
Yes, they're going to ask those kinds of things. So people are very astute today. They'll have done their homework. You cannot pull anything over on anyone. So we're very direct and very honest.
So given that, I'd like for us to increase our own intelligence around that issue. So will you be providing us information? We want to make sure we're competitive and we're not lowballing, and so.
We'll do a salary comparability chart, which will have all the surrounding districts, and work with Fran on what districts still include. You want to make sure you're comparing as much as you can apples to apples. That probably is. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your cooperation and collaboration.
Okay. Okay, we will now enter into executive session to discuss matters related to personnel, 5 ILCS 120/2 C1, and student residency issue 5 ILCS 120/29. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Mrs. Harrell first, Mrs. Owen second. Please roll call, Mrs. Carino.
Okay, Carol?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Oda? No. Marks? Ford?
Yes.
Huckabee? Yes. Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. We should be in executive session for about an hour. We're now returning to open session at 10:03. Okay, next up on the agenda is the summer 2017 life safety construction of our strategic plan finance goal 2.
We have both Scott and Matt Cooper of Green Associates to walk us through this. We are now looking at the tail end of the life safety survey, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the conditions that we've seen. So we're kind of amending this as we move through, as we see what the condition of the buildings are. So why don't I turn it over to Scott? I'm going to kind of jump in as needed, and we're going to just kind of tag team this. Guys.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
So here we are in late November, almost December. Snow is about to start falling, and it sounds kind of strange to start talking about summer construction, but this is the time we need to start doing it. June comes up pretty quick for buildings and grounds and construction and all the finance as well. So in order to make the timeline happen, we have to start discussing this now, get approval from the board to go out to bid, architects who put the bid specs together, go out in the streets, get the bids back, go through the information, present it to you, get your direction, how you want to proceed, and then probably in April, May, and June. Okay. So, give you a quick overview of our survey, our health and safety survey. 3 categories: category A, category B, category C. Category A, the most severe violations. We have 1 year to complete those. We are done with category A's. Category B, we have 5 years to complete, and we are currently in year 3 of the survey. So we have 2 more years over the summer, upcoming summer, summer of 17, and the summer of 18 to complete those category Bs. And then we have the remainder of the survey to finish category Cs, which we've already done some of those, like our fob systems, our security fob systems throughout the district. We already have those installed. Security cameras, we have those installed as well. Okay. So we're going to talk about health, life, safety items, or category B specifically, for the next couple of summers. And along the way, we're also going to present some alternates to consider as well. For instance, we have a fair amount of door hardware to install over the next, certainly the summer of 17, maybe summer of 18. But in the process of doing that, it would be a good time to possibly get rid of this mess. Okay, so basically to rekey the entire district on a master plan. So basically have a brand master key, building masters, and so on, that hierarchy below that. We also could possibly install security sets that would give the teacher, whatever space they're in, whatever classroom they're in, break room, wherever they are, their key can lock that space from the inside in case of a lockdown. Okay, so you can do things like that as well. Okay, also Parker's roof. The roof system is, half of it is 20 plus years old. The other half is 15 years old. The 20 plus part is on warranty, and we're starting to see failures in that. And the 15-year roof is going to be out of warranty next year, and we're seeing failures in that one as well. So it would be a good time to consider replacing the entire roof over a couple of summer period. So also, Parker's main gym, the North Gym, has 2 air handling units right now. They're about 40 years old. One of them is dead, and we can't get parts and pieces to fix it. So in the meantime, with replacing the one that's there now, we might want to consider air conditioning that space as well. Because in late in the school year or early in the school year, it's difficult to have meetings and events in that space during those temperatures. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tepper from Green, and we'll go through a little bit more detail.
Thank you for letting me come down and hang around with you for this evening. So I'll try not to keep it too long, and I'll try not to repeat too much more of what Scott said. Like you said, we're kind of 3 years through the 5-year requirements of the fees, so that's kind of where I was going to focus on based on the memo that was drafted out through. So the item number 1 that we are proposing to kind of move forward in 2017, and I kind of have these identified as currently approved as life safety amendments and funds for that are available. For all buildings, priority B, door systems coordination, and mainly this is doors that need closures that don't have them, doors that need a fire rating that don't currently have them, so those will get replaced and put in new ones. And that's kind of the extent, ones that are damaged or need a little bit of upkeep. And so, I mean, these are kind of a handful of doors at each school. Some of them are a little more than a handful, 10 or so, depending on, and it's maybe just needing a closer added to it or something like that. Complete extension of existing fire-rated wall systems. Like some of the pictures you can see, there's some walls that should go extend all the way to the deck and go. And those may be storage rooms or utility rooms type spaces. And so that would cover all that work in all the remaining school buildings right now. Another item B would be all buildings except Heather Hill. Heather Hill really didn't have much masonry type work, and we're trying to lump kind of contractors together. If we're going to do an exterior building masonry repair, it makes sense to kind of stage them at one building, and then they kind of go through the district to handle masonry repairs at all of them. You know, linnels that kind of need rework. This is, you know, Western Avenue where there's some cracking that are showing up by entry doors. Gaps in limestone sills, that's kind of at a lot of Serena Hills, Baltimore Hills. You know, that's kind of over time, sealants in here kind of fail and get picked out and erode away, and they systematically just kind of need to get replaced.
Are these right now simply cosmetic, or is there structural damage that?
I mean, there's some over here where there might be a little bit more rework that has to happen, where you kind of have to pull the veneer off a little bit and kind of rebuild it. Most of the stuff like that, I mean, it's not really cosmetic. It is an avenue where water can get inside the building envelope, and so that's what we're trying to stop. You know, you don't want moisture or elements getting through your wall system into the interior of the space. So I mean, most of these are more than cosmetic, but you know, are not overly dramatic in terms of repair and replacement. You know, Parker has, you know, it's hard to see in this picture, there's some cracking that are showing up, you know, above the windows and kind of spans through there. So that'll get ground out, get re-tuck pointed, and then, you know, move on from that point.
Is that a function of just maybe living near Chicago, it's the way it is, or is that?
Some of it's time, you know, it's expansion, contraction, those happen in a lot of joints, especially if aren't expansion joints built into the veneer. A lot of times you'll have a gap with sealant as opposed to a hard drop joint. And if there's not one of those in the right spot, you know, movement, buildings move. It's amazing how they do. And just in the small, little movements, I mean, quarter-inch, half-inch in brick and masonry, just it can't handle that, and crack develops. So, priority B item at Parker is trying to make compliant egress from the north gym mezzanine. This is kind of an older picture. This was an item that was on life safety, but those bleachers are now gone. But so this is kind of the current space. At the time of this photo, I think there's some exercise equipment and things up there. If this is intended to still be used as an occupiable space, you know, the stairs coming down and then it's kind of just open into the hallway at Parker, really it should be kind of a dedicated exit to kind of enclose that pathway all the way to the exterior, and that's kind of how the code is written. So these stairs and this mezzanine is really a product of building on in 1970, and then another addition came on in front of it, and came on in front of it. Closed this space where it used to empty into a gym lobby foyer and then just directly outside. And now it's become an interior hallway with classrooms on one side and the gym on the other. So it's kind of created this, you know, non-compliant anomaly within Parker. And so we're going to look at, if you want to still use this as an occupiable space, you know, we have to find a code compliant means of getting people out, off the mezzanine and out of the building safely.
Additionally,
Let's
go
back from that.
Additionally, that entire space up there still is an asbestos floor. So when you go to do that, you're gonna need to abate that asbestos. So we really need to have a conversation, and I think this is one of the areas that we're looking at getting you some alternates here. I think that you need to also consider abandoning it as occupiable space and looking at it as a storage space only. That area is going to probably cost you about $100,000 to make it an occupiable space. And in my opinion, it's not occupiable for much. So that's one of the areas that you're gonna need to take a look at. We'll have them bid out everything, and we'll have some alternates. But this is where we're talking about, we're gonna be bringing you, and prepare yourselves at the end, the numbers that you're gonna see are pretty substantial. But we're looking at bidding things out, getting alternates, and then coming back in the spring about what do we actually want to do and what don't we want to do. Because these Plan B, these priority Bs start to add up pretty fast.
Just real quick, if we did make this a storage space, which I imagine we would, look into what that would cost, is there a different code than if it were a usable space?
It's based on occupancy. So if you're going to be using it and have students and, the amount of space that's up there, you could have more than 50 people up there. If it turns into a storage, it'd be more like, code-wise, we look at it like 5 people would be up there at a maximum point of view. So you'd be able, it's kind of a different, the quantity and the amount of egress that's needed off of that.
My question is, I just out of curiosity, I'm just curious, the asbestos issue, do you address that issue even if it is a storage issue?
I think what we're saying is if it's just storage, you seal up the stairwell the way you need to make that
For security.
compliant, for security. And no, you leave that asbestos floor exactly where it is.
Well, and currently the way this has rubber mats, like kind of athletic mats, are over the VCT floor. So this that you're seeing here is kind of the black rubber that's on top of the asbestos containing tile.
I went to parents go up there and they work out and participate in a game.
Huh.
They run.
So it doesn't
It's just 5 months.
The asbestos floor.
Just 5 months.
It's not a district.
Yeah.
So it's in good condition underneath that program's floor, et cetera.
But it is one of the only places in Parker that still has asbestos containing tile. All other areas except for one in the IT room.
Right.
Are the only 2 spaces that have asbestos containing floor tile in the whole school. We abated some last 2 summers.
2 summers ago, correct.
Some of
Those
the
4.
And the
shop
nightmare about
class.
that is containing that, for them to abate, that's gonna be in.
Containment down there is going to be very difficult because of the space, how, it's open, 15, 20 feet in the air, it's going to be very difficult. And providing the tunnels in and out, if you've ever seen a contained asbestos area,
Right.
that's going to be difficult.
It's going to be tricky.
Yes.
So, and that's gonna be something that will come back to you with some options.
And as Scott was mentioning, so it's a priority C item actually, which priority C items are all considered recommendations. They don't have to take place, but when, a mechanical unit's in such a position that are 44 years old, one's not functioning anymore. And these units are off to the side of the stage, but mounted about 15 feet in the air. So they're very difficult to service and very difficult to maintain. And so what this would propose to happen is those would get removed, and then one kind of singular rooftop unit would probably get positioned with air conditioning and heating together as a kind of a self-sustained unit. So the North Gym would be able to be heated and air conditioned with one unit.
At a cost that would be less than taking care of that mezzanine.
So, and then, so this is moving on to, this is still proposed for 2017 summer, and these would be proposed for approval. So these are items that aren't on the life safety list right now, but we've had a track record, this is of door security hardware. So this is the classroom security hardware that Scott was talking about. Instead of, it's kind of the standard that we did do in the Parker edition of, it's a classroom lock function, so that the teacher can put a key into the inside of the lock without having to open the door and lock the outside lever, so no one can get in from the hallway side. And they can do it and you can get it keyed, so any key in the district will work for it if, someone else is in there. We've had success in other school districts of getting this approved as a life safety item because it involves security of the students. So this would handle, every classroom in the district could get new hardware potentially covered by a health life safety fund available. And this kind of looked into this option as well as, as a separate element to the key coordination and kind of relooking at how the district's hardware is being functioning. And then what Scott mentioned of what would be, and I kind of noted these, they would be considered priority B items. Parker, this is replace, the first section of Parker's roof systems. So the 6th grade wing, the media center, and above the admin is the oldest portion of Parker roofs, about 22 years old. As long as the north gym and the south gym are in that as well. The LGI is more recent, it's about 14, 15 years old at the time that this project would go, but the LGI is having some active issues here where water is coming through the membrane, through the Techno panels, which is the same kind of system that we have up above here, but it's leaving kind of tar residue, dripping through the roof system, and the tar is really from the built-up system above the Techno panels. So it's the insulation and the membrane that's up above it.
So is this a new problem?
The LGI has been kind of just recent in the last...
Since August?
And then there have been some kind of persistent problems along the wall of the 6th grade wing. I think the north gym and the south gym have been okay, but when we kind of went up on the roof, there's some rusting that are happening on the metal copings. And then this area in here is the locker room area, which is kind of preliminary where I would propose putting the rooftop unit for the gym. It's a concrete roof system already, so you won't necessarily have to work on too much extra structure to hold this unit, and then we would kind of go through the wall to feed the gym for those mechanical units. And it kind of made sense to do the roofing and the mechanical unit at the same time because it's kind of all going to get...
So the entire roof opposed to piecemealing?
Well, the roof of the locker area.
So why not do, I know it's more expensive, but why not just do an entire thing and be done with it opposed to, I mean, I know cost, it's
Right.
about cost, but.
It's possible. I have to look into it a little bit more. It's a lot of roof. I'm not sure if the whole thing would be able to get done in the summer.
We do have, you'll be looking at the next part in the following summer, so we did it piecemeal. And then that locker room, by the way, is leaking. We actually had a teacher slip fall and crack their head on that locker room. So we are having leaking issues out of the locker room.
And if you can see in the picture there,
This is above the locker room, and there's all these kind of patches, that's what all of this is patch, all kind of all
If
along
you
that
look
whole
close, you can see
system.
that they're starting to bubble into curl.
I don't doubt it.
So, and that's kind of, this breaking it up into pieces was really just to be able to stage it for a summer type work because, and the other areas here have a lot of rooftop equipment and things that, especially on this end, will need a sizable crane probably to lift those things off to re-roof it, where kind of these areas don't have a substantial amount of rooftop equipment. And so it's kind of, and they're kind of the problem areas currently. The other ones are still, within the warranty window for the next year, but they're not as problematic as kind of these spaces, are being at this current time. So it was just trying to divide it into, tolerable chunks. Moving through some more of, this being a current problem that happened this last summer. This was what was replaced here at Normandy Villa of the water main, the two holes that kind of, popped into place, and this that kind of leaked through the asphalt pavement. So this is kind of where the water line would get replaced, and the backflow preventer passed inspection, but the guy that inspected it said this was probably gonna be the last time he was gonna be able to, because he just wasn't able to work the device because of just the age and the rust of what was happening with it. So, you know, this as being a kind of a damaged piece would qualify potentially for a health license to be put on that docket of things. So moving on into the other thing that Scott was mentioning, I kind of identify this as non-fundable scope of health, life, safety. So it's just talking about where the pots of money that the projects might come from. And what this item is looking at the remaining door systems that weren't touched by the first part where you added closers and things like that, and not touched by new classroom locks, but looking at the rest of the doors, maybe trying to get rid of door knob hardware, which really isn't ADA compliant anymore, and then rekeying, so Scott doesn't want to run like a jailer. Try to get it down to 1 or 2 keys, and we look at the district as a whole of master key systems and being able to identify individual classrooms for a key that, you know, is on a schedule that's printed out, and you can just look at it and go, we have a new teacher coming here, they get S4 key, you get it cut, they get that key. As opposed to kind of what potentially has happened in the past, there could be a lot of master keys floating around. So, you know, a teacher can have a master key to Flossmoor Hills and not even know it, but that was how it came about.
Are you also looking into key cards for locks?
For classrooms?
Yeah, for classrooms.
We haven't explored that. I mean, we did.
Okay, so, okay.
I mean, if that was where the board or the district wanted to go, I mean, obviously that is something that could be explored. That does add in an extra complexity of just.
I was going to add an extra cost, but they don't see the cost of this.
I don't know, I think you're probably looking at frames as well then too, to accept that strike.
Unless you do surface mounted stuff, depending on a lot of exterior work that's happening. I've seen districts do that, and they shifted all their doors to a complete key card system, but it was a decent expense to that. But, you know, the next part of this process after, this is kind of just informational of seeing what, you know, the administration and the staff have kind of said what their concerns are moving forward for these next improvements, and so this is kind of how that came about. 2 IT rooms, one at Flossmoor Hills and one at Heather Hill. I mean, there are temperature gauges, but I wrote them down here. You know, this one was reading 88 degrees, and this one was reading 82 degrees. And kind of these are the looks of them. This one at Heather Hill is really just a small built-in closet inside another space. So these really aren't kind of IT rooms as you would kind of normally want them to be. And like at Flossmoor Hills, this is right off the media center, which we think is attached to the media center HVAC system. So during the wintertime right now, the IT room is getting heat put into it, which is not where you want heat being put into. And so what this item would be is not just looking at putting in a cooling unit, but kind of looking at really what happened or how best we can holistically resolve this issue to the best possibility. It might just be, you know, Flossmoor Hills, take the ductwork that's feeding it away from it and you put in an exhaust fan, and that might be enough for that. But we would look into that a little bit deeper just to see and try to alleviate this condition. I know at Flossmoor Hills, right over the wall is a copy machine that's had numerous service calls just because it's overheating from the ambient. And so the toner and the drums are not functioning properly. And that's kind of a constant nuisance.
These 2 items, I think we really see as just not optional. We're going to continue to fry up the equipment if we don't take care of the heat issue for both of those places.
And then this was kind of added in. This wasn't identified on the memorandum that was given earlier, but possibly looking at Normandy Village here, kind of these spaces of the offices where we might be able to kind of take the flooring out, take the asbestos floor and remove the abandoned piping from the galvanized piping that is no longer used because we kind of redid copper in here last summer. And, you know, while this is kind of a small area, but we might be able to, depending on timing and schedule, get this taken care of, in the summer and just kind of, get it wrapped up before we kind of move into the next.
Remember, this
area.
whole side back here is all complete, but the rest of the building eventually is going to have to be completed. And it's just kind of an idea to take a look at what it would take to small chunk the rest of this building complete. So we're not saying that this is something that we definitely want to do, but we might want to consider just getting all small chunks of time.
And some of the items like this can be handled the same way that we did this last summer's work, where like we just did the toilet room, but that was held as an alternate. So that was an item that was held off by itself, and you could just say, no, we just don't want to do that at this time, but at least it gives you the opportunity to bid it out, get it moving, and then see where the costs come in. And so then, just real quickly, looking then down the road at 2018, these are also, funds that are currently approved for life safety B items, and all these are at Heather Hill. So this is kind of the exterior, these sealant joints are on the older portion are all kind of cracking and becoming brittle. But the panels themselves are also showing signs of rust and wear. So whether or not this is down the road and nothing kind of needs approval at this kind of the next board meeting level, but it's just kind of on the horizon where we can always seal this off, and that's kind of what the Health Life Safety Amendment kind of relates to. But, the metal panels themselves might need to be relooked at and their state of where they're at with things. Some sealant issues around some univents, in different wall systems, and then, a couple cabinets and doors that were identified as being distressed. And then the other part of 2018 would be the remainder of Parker's roof, where, it's kind of the bulk of everything else, but it's where kind of the big heavy equipment are, so potentially just stage the crane for takeoff and then bring it back for put back on, because it's going to be a fairly substantial crane to kind of have to address the units over here and over here, just because there isn't an easy way to get to the building. And then these are just some current things. There was a hole that we had identified, and that's probably going to get patched shortly. And that's, those kind of things happen. And then, the stick that just found its way right through the whole system. So that's some of the rusting that's occurring on some of the metal copings and caps.
What we also started talking about this part of the roof is there's a lot of old, help me out here guys, DX systems.
Yes.
That air condition individual rooms, one or two of them. And so what that requires is that you actually have to penetrate the roof in order to get those systems into those classrooms, which of course is an issue with the risk of giving more places for it to leak. When you are looking at this part of the roof, this may or may not be the time to have the conversation that says, are we interested in having a Parker air conditioning? Because this is basically the last piece that will be done. And is it worth putting a chiller on the roof for the rest of that building? I'm not saying that it is. I'm not saying that it isn't. But it may be a conversation that you want to have, because if you're tearing off the whole roof, that may be the time to have that conversation as to whether you want all of Parker to be air conditioned. The reason that we're starting to have these conversations now is because if that is something that you're interested in, and quite frankly, even just the cost of that roof alone, even if you don't air condition it, you may want to consider bonding some of this. And that would, of course, require time on my end to have discussions with PMA to start taking a look at what our options are if we wanted to do another, say, a 20-year bond, which would be the life expectancy at the minimum of that roof. And then again, if you wanted to put a chiller there, then you would have at least 2 buildings in the district that are 100% air conditioned, that being Parker and Serena.
But again, you know, it's just one of those, you know, we hear about it all the time, when are we gonna air condition the rest of? And it just seems like that's the opportune time to talk about it at least, and whether that's something that you wanna do or not, that's at the discretion of the board, but it's the opportune time to have a conversation.
So then moving forward is just, these are the same line items discussed with the pictures, but kind of the proposed kind of dollar costs that are associated with them. And, you know, the hardware systems for just the closers around $120,000. Complete the fire, you know, extensions, you know, $33,000. The masonry, the modifications for the egress in order to gymnasium, I did put in, you know, a budget amount for the abatement cost. Which is kind of where that falls, and then, you know, replace aged non-functional mechanical units, 95. This one has a little more into it than just kind of the, I think 60,000 is what was for the mechanical unit, but this also adds in, you know, a couple other associated things with that mechanical unit or roof type scenarios that are kind of just in that area.
And that would add air conditioning to the north.
Correct. Correct.
Now, the modifications at 79.7, is that the option for abatement and
Yes.
egress, or is, so you don't have another number for it, we just turn it into storage?
Not at this time, but we can generate that for the next board meeting.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
If we decide, say we had a conversation, we had, and said, yep, we're gonna do the roof, we're gonna put the air conditioning in, would we even do that work, or would we put air conditioning in the north gym, or would that cover it all?
No, this, we would kind of, I talked with our mechanical consultant as well, that, you know, it makes sense for the north gym to have its own unit, because then it can be operated and staged on and off depending on usage, as opposed to being tied to a whole chiller system and master building system. It is its own big space. It's a kind of the perfect type of scenario to have just a packaged unit that is heating and cooling, and it just, you turn it on and
As a
it
parent
goes.
in the gym, I fully love that.
And Parker would still have 4 separate systems. So you'd have the one over at the north, through the north gym. You have one that's handling the 6th grade wing. You have one that's handling the new addition, and then you would have that potentially the chiller for that was for the 7th grade, all the way there, that last piece. So you still are going to have multiple systems at Parker, and not all the same system on it.
Does that cause a problem in Mr. Davis?
No, not necessarily. Chillers are the best way to cool a space with chilled water. Air handlers are just as good as well.
It would be less amounts of equipment potentially, because in the individual DX units in each classroom, you know, has a associated, you know, condenser like you have at home sitting outside, and the unit inside, it might move to just one big rooftop air handler that can, you know, cycle through things. So it kind of limits the quantity of some of the things.
Additionally, those DX units are getting to be very old, and they're kind of like, there are many problems just waiting to go off.
They'll probably show up on the next 10-year life safety survey as needing replacement or something. So, you know, having the roof area handled now, and that's what kind of, Fran, just opening up the conversation for the next down the road time period. If you're going to be replacing them in 10 years, you know, while the roof is half its life, as opposed to let's kind of look at it all holistically, all at the same time as it's occurring. But those are discussions and decisions for a later date. So for currently approved, you know, about $482,000, including contingency, soft costs, and other fees. Ones that we would, that have been identified by the district but could be proposed and approved as a health life safety amendment in the interim time would be the door security hardware, $230,000 for all classroom doors in all district buildings. Parker's roof at almost $1 million, and for that first part of Parker's roof, and then the Normandy Villa, you know, water main replacement So these items combined could be, through health life safety funds. Then the non-fundable, which is kind of rekeying the whole district together, with the remaining doors and looking at each facility holistically, the IT rooms, and then Normandy Villa kind of comes into that amount. So total, what was identified as a potential for 2017 work, kind of totals around the 2.7 as a complete project cost, including contingencies and contractors overhead and profit.
Keeping in mind again, we are not asking you to approve $2.7 million expenditure at this point. What we're going to ask you to do in December is give us the ability to go out and bid, get some alternates, give us some options of what we can do, and then figure out what our priorities are, take a look at more of what kind of funding, how we would fund it, and then bring you strong recommendations and some options in the spring for what you want to do, what they want to do in the summer of 17, and then start those conversations about 18.
Is there a non-negotiable for 2017, some that we need to?
There are some non-negotiables in there, absolutely. And honestly, I gotta tell you, I think that Parker roof is a non-negotiable, at least that $1 million right there, because it's just failing and people are getting hurt. Yeah, okay. And people are getting hurt. So we need to take care of some of those issues.
And then just the last slide is just the 2018, the same items that we had kind of talked about, just kind of the gravity of the things, 2018, these are the remaining fees at Heather Hill, which the bulk of it is, the boilers that are 44 years old, the air handlers that are 44 years old, heating vents, most of the mechanical systems there, for the kind of that 576,000, and then the rest of Parker roof with the 1.2, it's a little bit bigger area than the other one. And then, for 2018 to potentially be around the $1.8 million mark for all the items that have been identified here.
That does not include a chiller. If you want to talk about air conditioning,
Right.
you're probably looking at another $1 million. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of stuff. That being said, after all of this, let's just pie in the sky do it all. You've now got pretty much all the mechanicals at every one of your buildings. You have new roofs at every one of your buildings. You have a lot of things that you won't be now looking at again for another 20, and for some things even longer. You essentially end up with new across the board. And like I said, we're not suggesting that we do all of it, but what we want to do is gather more information and then be able to bring you more information in order to make better decisions. So I guess that's where we ask you what questions, because it's a lot.
Questions? I'm good.
So then what we're going to ask you for in December on the 12th is the approval to put this stuff out to bid and get some real numbers as opposed to estimates as to what some of this may cost, and then we'll start looking at what we actually want to do and how we want to finance, whether we want to use cash for some. Remember, Matt was talking about health, life, safety, which is all well and good, but we only have so much money in our life safety fund. So it's not going to cover all of this by any means. But that'll then give us, the idea we can start taking a look at some options and what we're looking at. I'll start having some conversations with PMA, getting their ideas on some of this. And we'll bring you more information in the spring once we have real costs and can figure out maybe what you may want to actually consider doing. And what things really aren't options because there are priority views.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a thought. Complete support going out and figuring out how to finance this as it stands. But I think the larger issue that hasn't been addressed is how this fits in with the review of our enrollment numbers and our facility, our plan facility usage. And I would be hesitant to move forward on a $3 or $4 million project without knowing if this is how we intend to use our facilities for the next 20 years. So I would encourage whatever the board reconstitutes itself to look like in April to work closely with the new superintendent to decide, talk through multiple scenarios of what delivery of education might be looking like in the next 20 years, at least the next 10 years, and this is how we want it to look. Because to embark on this plan, it's hard to turn back from. And I hate to see the district embark on a plan that was short-sighted and only based on current assumptions without reviewing any other possibilities. Thoughts I'd like to share on that.
Do we have that conversation as a board every certain years, as I don't recall that?
We should, yes, so the board should be doing, yes.
Yeah, so I know.
We have not.
Okay. So
In the past 2 years.
When's the last time we actually had that conversation? I just wanted to look.
It's been brought up and discussed, and there was no interest on the larger part of the board to move forward.
No, I mean, because you've been on the board for a long time. When was the last time we had that discussion? Because I actually want to pull up that information.
We started to have those discussions when we met with the 21st Century Learning, because we looked at how we could reconfigure classrooms. And then the plan at that time with that board was to start to look at, undertake some studies as to what possible things we could do. But the board never officially charged the superintendent at that time with coming back with those studies.
Okay, so this is on, so we haven't had those discussions for our facilities, it sounds like, at least definitive decisions made about the long-term use of our facilities in at least like 10, 15
No,
years.
4 years, 5 years.
So we have, that, I guess what I'm trying to,
I was for my first year here, that some of those discussions.
About 5 years ago when we started to have those discussions, and then they ended.
did we have them before then, 10 years? I'm just trying to get an idea about.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I was asking, interesting, because there was a discussion on, some funny for the conflict, to bring that up. Would they embark on a conversation around, which school is that is closing? Is it, they built that beautiful school, is it East Lane? North. That was one of the comments that was made, that it was not a longer term discussion. It was looking at some immediate 5-year and looking at the growth,
Right.
but maybe what they was never a long-term discussion about where education would go, what it would look like in 10, 20 years. And then not having, not urban planners, but not bringing any external.
6 years ago was the last time we had that done. We had lost the name of the term. Did the live birth studies, and we had all those statistics. Yeah, the demographics, yeah, 6 years ago. And before that, because that was how they came up with the additions, that's how the additions that we did, that's how those additions came to be done. Was demographics, that was an original plan that the superintendent had presented to us about doing different, we had different options. If you remember for Parker, we had 3 different options.
And then we.
Cafeteria and and those, the originating point of those discussions was how would our facilities be used and how would we be delivering education, and then we've not, we have as a board have not taken these conversations up or directed anyone.
And annually, we'll look at live birth to determine kindergarten enrollment and do some of those kinds of projections, but nothing formal has been done here since I've been here.
Yeah, 6 years probably.
What month did those, excuse me, and as we tacked it, what month did those conversations take place, do you recall?
Whatever month the board chose to have them, it's not scheduled for every month.
Well, okay, within the cycle of a year.
It took over a year. Of course, it's probably a year or 2 years.
Okay, so maybe to start in like late May, and as part of
Which was kind
strategic
of
planning.
ongoing discussions. They should have been involved in the strategic planning. I think that came up in some discussions, but they were jettisoned.
All right, well, maybe that's something we can pick up second semester. And talk about that with,
You wouldn't want to do it until you have a superintendent.
right. But,
As a board, you should, you know, what any board would want.
right.
But you want direction from the superintendent.
Okay. Well, you can make that in the springtime. Okay. Any further questions, discussion? Next on the agenda, we have action items, approval of bills. The bills were reviewed by Ms. Marks.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to approve the bills. I had a couple questions. Finally, when we'll come to that under discussion. So I would recommend approving bills for the month of November in the amount of $906,027.55.
Second, any discussion?
I'm sorry, who made the second?
Second was Mrs. Harrell.
Yeah, I'm sure you all saw this, but, and I want to thank Fran for sending out the itemized copies, because you know that in the financials, that last page of the financials always has the chart of categorized spending for all of our 3 law firms. It's something I think we need to pay attention to. You may or may not have seen it. October isn't included in that chart yet. France has no things to keep her busy. But, 34% of our yearly spending right now on law bill, just for Scariano, has been on FOIA requests. It's a huge percentage. 39% of that was teacher negotiations. So if we consider that, we might want to look at how we're handling our FOIA requests if we're not putting up information that should be made available, so it doesn't have to be FOIA. It's something I think we as a board should talk about and perhaps reach some better conclusions on how to do that. Because we are halfway through the year and it's an outrageous amount of taxpayer money. And that doesn't include a large amount of FOIA requests that were handled in November, because those aren't broken into that 34%.
I went to one FOIA request, and I was going to ask about that with the FOIA request for the presentation from, and that was public. So that's why I was a little bit questioning, like, was it one of those requests, and I highlighted that one, and it was, the person was asking for the information that, I can't think of the name, I don't know, Clay did. And so, I mean, I was wondering, is that responsible to ever be billboard reported?
A lot of times it is. I mean, if they're pretty routine requests, they're done pretty quickly. We get a lot of, my office gets a lot of requests for compilation of data, and it is for commercial purposes, and they disclose that, but we can pull it down off of the system really fast and shoot it out, and those kinds of things don't really require the attorneys to, you don't really use them for those. It's the more in-depth FOIAs that
We have a lot. I mean, you see them all, and you see what they are, and you see how long, and then those itemized bills, that's why I asked for itemized bills, was because they'll tell you how long our attorney spent on those. And we've had some almost $700 chunks of time. It's not actually uncommon any longer, apparently. So I think the thought process might also want to be how the district wants to be and how we as a board want to begin to handle it. You can talk to community members if there's the same individuals over and over and ask them, these are nuisance, in some cases they're nuisance requests. I don't know that these specifically are, but I think we really want to pay attention to how we're spending our money. And that's why those itemized law bills are really important to look at. And I just wanted to call attention. I'm sure everyone looks at them. I know they're in our packets every month. But we don't have now because we don't see the physical bills. One person, unless they come in, and I don't know everyone's process is to do that. But it's easy to have copies of those bills maybe to send for us each to look at, but more important to discuss them and maybe come to some kind of consensus as to how we want to go forward with that in the best interest of the taxpayers. And the time our administrators have to spend. I know they get turned over to the attorneys, but I believe it's also probably onerous.
I think they're right.
Yeah.
nuisance request, is this something that we should monitor over the next few months, or to see if there is a pattern where we may see a diminishing piece of this, or did we see more this year, which I don't know, from previous years, or this? Let's see, I'm asking if we've noticed a pattern, and if we will see it shifting, because we have shifting happening in the district, or, but I know we need to look at it overall, period, about how we handle.
You know what, this is,
From memory, the person who was doing the more nuisance stuff has been doing it ever since I've been on the court.
That's what I'm asking, is
Years.
this-
No, I don't see that as diminished.
you know what, before we get into a FOIA handling conversation, we're getting a little further off the bills.
Oh, sorry, yeah, right, okay.
So that's I think that's a good topic for conversation later on. Certainly in terms of, you know, if we have a legal obligation to this, you know, how can we proactively look at information we could share that would have a lot of interest in it to try to proactively avoid having a situation where suddenly we're scrambling to get things.
My point is to bring up that we should further discuss this, but as part of the bills, this is a bill issue, and I think it's important to pay attention to it when we move it forward on an agenda. It's not to speak about.
No, I understand.
So that was the largest one. Everything else in the bills is. I wasn't able to, I didn't have the time to go back and compare where we stood on negotiations, and we haven't had enough of them negotiations, so we'll usually can compare that over the prior negotiating term to see how those compare. And we've got at least 3 or 4 comps that we could run just to make sure we're in line with how that looks, which we should do. The board members want to see that.
If there's no further comments or questions, we have a roll call, Mrs. Perino.
Okay, Harold?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Odom?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have approval of personnel report, strategic plan. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Next on the agenda, we have approval of payroll, strategic plan, finance goal 2.
Pretty standard payroll.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the payroll in the amount of $1,264,962.24 for the month. I'm sorry. For the month of October, as presented.
I'll make the motion.
Mrs. Odom, second. Mrs. Worth. Any discussion? We have roll call, Mrs. Perino.
Okay, Ford?
Yes.
Odom?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have approval of personnel report, strategic plan, student achievement goals 1 and 2. I will entertain a motion to approve the personnel report as presented. Mrs. Ford,
Second.
second. Mrs. Odom. Any discussion? Mrs. Perino?
Okay. Odom?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have possible approval of interim superintendent, which we will table. And we will go to, I'm sorry. Okay, we will jump to number 15. I will entertain, which is the hearing officer's report regarding student 000175032. I will entertain a motion to approve the hearing officer's report regarding student 000175032 as presented. Mrs. Odom,
Second.
Mrs. Horth, any discussion? Mrs. Perino?
Okay, Harold?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Odom?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have approval of hearing officer's report regarding student 270001840. I will entertain a motion to approve the hearing officer's report regarding the student 270001840 as presented. Mrs. Horth,
Second.
Second, Mrs. Harrell. Any discussion? We have roll call, Mrs. Brino.
Okay, Marks?
Yes.
Odom?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Worth?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. Next on the agenda, we have hearing officer's report regarding student 27001836. Entertain the motion to approve the hearing officer's report regarding student 27001836 as presented. Mrs. Horth?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Harrell. Any discussion? We have a roll call, Mrs. Brino.
Simmons?
Yes.
Odom?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Worth?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes, the motion is passed. Next on the agenda. Next on the agenda, we will be entering into executive session again, discuss matters related to negotiations 5 ILCS 120/2C2. I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
Make a motion? Yes.
Mrs. Harrell, second. We have
Second.
Mrs. Horton. We roll call, Mrs. Brino.
Okay, Carol?
Yes.
Worth?
Yeah.
Odom?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Paredes?
Okay,
Steve.
yes. Yes, and the motion is passed.
Okay.
We'll enter into executive session for about 10 minutes. There is no action items to follow the executive session.